Yes, starting off basically a bit about myself. The reason for that is that I like talking about myself, but also I got some feedback from one of the colleagues about a talk I did a few weeks ago, and she said, Rita, I think it's important to introduce a bit about where you've come from and why you've ended up standing where you have. So I thought, right, okay, well, what would you like to know? And it was like, well, I've got a husband, I've got children, I've got a mother and a daughter, I've got a niece, I've got lots of friends, and I thought, well, I'm not quite sure you'd be quite interested in that bit. So I thought, right, what do you really want to know? Well, the reason we're here today is it's about bipolar, so obviously I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that journey, but it is only a part of what I'm about. There's much more to me than bipolar, thank God. But it's also had a massive, significant part of my life in a negative way, and now what I believe for me is a positive way. And the way I've chosen today to describe it, because I just like pictures, is I think in everybody's life there's a rainbow, and at the end of that rainbow there's a pot of gold, and everybody's pot of gold is going to be different. For some people, I run a bipolar group in Stockport, and I'll just look at bipolar's group of people sort of, for the purpose of today. But for some people, their pot of gold is they've got an absolutely brilliant job. They're not interested in sort of any more deeper relationships, but their job is important. Their pot of gold is quite full. Other people's pot of gold is staying out of hospital and perhaps being able to go to the shops, maybe do a bit of cooking. And their pot of gold is absolutely delighted. My pot of gold is my family, my friends, obviously my job, because Steve's here. So it's absolutely, I would say, an absolutely amazing pot of gold. But the journey to get there has been extremely difficult. And I think often at Spectrum we talk about the positives of bipolar disorder. And that can be quite an edgy topic, because I feel that there are lots of positives to bipolar disorder, but I think if I didn't mention the negatives, it would be very insulting to what my family have gone through, what my friends have witnessed, and what have you. So I can't pretend, and I wouldn't want to, that life hasn't been difficult. But the way I see the rainbow is, when Steve mentioned before about would you push that button and not have bipolar, for all the chaos I've caused in my life and the upset I've caused for people, I just couldn't push that button because I just can't stand the thought of being boring. I just really can't. But what I really, really wish I'd had is knowing how to manage my symptoms, what happened and what have you. If I could have learned that in my 20s, the chaos wouldn't have been caused. And I think for me, it's like this rainbow is like, I believe for me, is I see colours so much more deeply. And I mean that in an actual practical way. I was out walking with my twin sisters, like the pole opposite of me, and at Christmas, and I said, oh bloody hell, look at the berries on that tree. She went, Rita, it's a tree. And I felt that so much deeper. Or you'll say, oh God, who's made that Christmas cake? She'll be like, just eat it. And I think, I've got absolutely no psychological background, and I think that's great in this job, because if it did, it would influence perhaps what I've got to offer. But one thing that I do understand is Maslow's hierarchy of need. That's the only thing I've ever understood, because it's a triangle and I can get it. And I think, for me, bipolar people are probably, I don't know if there's others, very few of the people that actually can get to self-actualization. You might cause a lot of trouble around you, but whoa, you're having a good time. You really, things are going good. So that's the bit about me. Right, what the main themes that I want to sort of talk about today is what really happens on the ground at Spectrum in terms of service users. What does service user involvement mean? That's, I think it's something that Tim sort of touched on really, is that...
Worth repeating.
What was that?
It's worth repeating.
It's worth repeating. It is worth repeating. Yeah, service user involvement is a bit of a buzzword, I feel, at the moment. Not just in psychological treatments. I think in general it's like you have to have service user involvement, and you're like, great. And I've got, like Tim, I've got loads of gripes, and one of my gripes is when you go to an organisation, whether it be a charity, whatever, and they say, oh yeah, we're service user led, and you're like, oh, thank God for that. And you read the first thing they've wrote, and you're like, that is such bobbins. If you're service, that is just not the case. What my role is in Spectrum, what are the challenges we face in engaging people with bipolar? And what are we doing to actually look at how we can develop and encourage and support people to work with us? Right, so what is service user involvement? I mean, it should speak for itself really, but I thought I'd spell it out anyway. For us at Spectrum, it's lots and lots of different things, and people get involved in lots of different ways. So, for example, the chap on the phone recently, the way I'm learning all this, but the way the press works, once they get hold of one of our papers, they'll say, right, we need a quote, and we want it in 2 hours, and it's got to be from someone with bipolar. Oh yeah, just leave it with me. So then, you know, so at the moment, usually it's me or my colleague Debbie who get a phone call, and it can be late into the evening. And an example of how it's got to be a service user who responds is, recently I was in John Lewis, and I got this phone call from the guy at Spectrum who deals with the press and stuff. And I actually thought it was like Henry trying to get me out of the place. Do you know what Johnny was saying? It wasn't. And he said, Rita, I'm really, really sorry to bother you. I know it's your day off, but can you? I said, oh, sorry, I'm not even at home, so not going to. No, we really got to help with it, so I can't. So I said, well, I'll tell you what, email it to me, and when I get home, I'll have a look. And he went, how long will you be? I've got shopping. But this is the pressure he's under, and the fact that there isn't more people to go to, it's real. So I said, all right, I've never done anything like this before. So I said to him, I tell you what, will you just give me an idea of what the type of things people say? He said, I can't do that. I said, help me out here. I said, well, just perhaps how long it should be, or perhaps this. He said, I can't put words into your mouth, Rita. So gets home, opens it up, and he'd done a little bit. Well, I tell you something, there's nothing more hilarious. It couldn't be further than anything I'd have said. His was very much about sort of economics and God knows what else. Where I would have come, it was about the IAP study, about access to therapies. Mine would have been a lot more about what people are gaining from it, the difference it would have made to my life, or what have you. So that's sort of an example of why you just cannot have, you can't pretend that you're using service users in this kind of way, you just can't. I've tried, I'm joking. And then people receive therapy as well, obviously that's what we're about, so some people might get that. Some people actually read through some of the applications we put for grants or studies or what have you, and we'll look over it, add some suggestions and things like that. We have peer support groups, psychoeducation. David might want to talk about that in the brain. And people might just want to read some of the stuff that we do and comment on it. Or they might just want to read the stuff that we send from Spectrum Connect and circulate it to other people, which is brilliant. People, service users speak at conferences, at talks, teaching, what have you. And just general networking, getting the word out, telling people about us, etc. And I think actually one of the things I wanted to sort of show in that is that there isn't a type of person who fits the service user role at Spectrum. You know, we need lots and lots of different people who enjoy doing lots and lots of different things. I like speaking and being with people. My colleague Debbie is really good at the academic side, so we work really well together, but we need both. So, this is cogs in the wheel, in case you haven't noticed. Right. So, if you, like our research assistants, are involved in more or less all of this. So for nearly every study we have to have people involved in most of these. So you can appreciate, you know, when you're looking at, say, 5 or 6 people in a service reference group, which I'll come on to in a bit, and the focus groups, for another 4 or 5 people, then all the people in the therapy, and then all the people to look at the grants, and all the people. It's just like, for them, it's like, this is massive. We've got to get people who are willing and want to, and we'll actually get something out of it. You know, you're not going to be dragging people off the streets or outside the outpatient appointments just because they've got bipolar. People need to get something from it, and that's probably pretty obvious. But I see this very, very differently, and it's when I first started working from Manchester and came to Lancaster, what I saw is opportunities, because I really still don't get how we've got all these opportunities at Spectrum, yet we're struggling to get hold of people. There's something not quite right, and I don't think it's just, I think there's things that we're learning that we're going to try and address, and I'll talk to you about that in a bit, but there's also something about the wider system. The fact that I've never ever been offered through my psychiatrist or GP any kind of psychological intervention, any kind of research, or what have you, just think just doesn't fit right. So I would say all these are opportunities for people at some stage to get involved if they wish to. Not everyone's into voluntary work, that's absolutely fine. It's not right for everybody. But if you are, there's lots available. And what I find really quite difficult is, and why I see this as a massive opportunity, is when I first came out of hospital and I was sort of well, so it was thought I was absolutely bored, senseless. I just can't tell you the pain of being sat at home, feeling useless, not having a job, not having a purpose. And I often used to say to Henry, I just hate Monday mornings. He said, oh, so do I. But no, you hate it because you're going to work. I hate it because I'm not. And I can sit at home with nothing to do, a low self-esteem, when I could have been involved in something like this. And it just seems such a shame. All these opportunities that are available, and people don't know about them. So, like, what have people got to offer? Why me? I asked somebody recently if they'd be interested in, we're starting something like, we haven't quite got the name and we haven't quite got the structure, but it's something like an advisory group where 5 or 6 people will meet on a regular basis to support the work at Spectrum. And those 5 or 6 people will be offered training and in terms of the job, trainings in terms of sort of boundaries and keeping yourself safe, and bespoke training, as in training that they as a group have asked for. And in return, obviously, the main thing is that those people are going to be given an opportunity to get back into the workplace and move on. But we also gain from that, as in Spectrum, that we've, someone thinks I've done well. Thank you once again. So, what was the saying there? What was the word? Thank you, Derek. Right, so getting back into work, but there will be absolutely no doubt about it that there's that Spectrum will gain from that as well, because people will be able to help us with quotes and what have you. And we're also hoping to have like a volunteer sort of chair, so that if people wanted to do a little bit more, then when perhaps me and Debbie are in, they could come in and do some work with us as well. So that's where we're going. But why would you bother? Now this is the thing that I find really sad, really sad. And I've got part of a bipolar group in Stockport, and it's full, and I seriously mean it, full of incredible people, really incredible people. The brightest, funniest, artistic, there's some other things I could say as well, but you know, it's the wrong kind of people. They are absolutely amazing. And when I've said to them, are you interested in coming along? The amount of people say, why me? What would you want me for? And you're like, oh my God, that's just, that makes me feel sick almost. But each person with bipolar has their own experience, and that's what makes us such a complicated bunch to work with, I think. I think you've got a bit of a problem to work with us myself, but I'm not going to go there. But because we aren't easy. But when you get to know us and when you work with us well, I don't think you can get a better bunch. I think there's a massive, massive amount of talent that's not been tapped, and that's just nothing short of sad, and also from an economic, socio-economic point of view, ridiculous. So we need to have different experiences. We did the videos for the study that Bev's going to talk about, and people, you know, I was asked questions about my parenting, and you know, my answers would be very different to some other people's. So, and that's really, really important, because no, there isn't a specialist in bipolar disorder. I can only be a specialist in me. You know, we're all very different. Bipolar's tied up, like Steve said, in your personality and your upbringing in this and that and that. It's just so complicated. So the more people that we've got, the better, the more reflective of the bipolar community it is. It's like I'm always very conscious when people say, well, oh, would you give a comment on this or comment on that? I'm saying, it's got to be more than just me. We need more people, and we know that, and we're working at it. And also there's the motivation. So the motivation of people with bipolar to work with somewhere like Spectrum or Bipolar UK, because basically at the end of the day is I never thought I'd see the day ever where I'd pick up my computer and on Sunday night and go and just have a little peek at what I'm doing. It's a massive interest. Sometimes I go to things and I don't know whether I'm there because I'm working or there because I just want to find out something for myself, and it's like you're getting paid really to. Do you find, yeah, you're getting paid to find things that will help me, and also, massively important, things like if, you know, my family or friends, if they end up in the same situation as I did, I don't want them not to have better resources, better services than I had. They deserve more than that. And identifying with issues. I think the thing is when you're with a group of bipolar people just say, you just get it, you don't have to explain it. You sat there in a group and someone says something like, oh yeah, you just get it. That makes life a lot easier. And also as well with this famous group, advisory group that we're hoping to, that we will be setting up, it's those connections and networks, because I live in Stockport, so if you ask me, oh Rita, is there anywhere we can go in Stockport for this or that, I'd have a good idea, or I'd know people who might be able to help me with that. But if you ask me in Cumbria or somewhere else, I wouldn't have a clue. I don't live there, but that's why I get people from different places. We just do. And keep the work service user focused. I have to say, in Spectrum, in a way, they haven't got a choice because it's part of the way they get the research grants and blah 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 blah. But there's no cutting corners, there's no ticking boxes. It actually just happen, and if the fact that service users are involved actually makes that a much easier process. It's just sometimes that little reminder that, hey, can we just have a little remember? And I think right, I think it's this one that's on. Right, quick. Right, state the obvious. Often, you know, like, even some of the words that we NRH and IBPPI and some of the words that sort of used, I think that's what Steve said part of my job was at the beginning. Right, what you really need to do is state the obvious. Right, development of the service use group. Right, we're going to, it's going to look a bit like this: a 2-hour monthly meeting, training, research or return to work training, depending where that person's at, and area lead engagement and development workers. So all sounds good. The benefits, I think you've already covered it, haven't you, Tim? So that's fine. And what next? What I would ask people from today, dead quickly, is really, can you just spread the word? If you meet people with bipolar or people with an interest, just let them know. Just give us Google us, whatever. Believe in ourselves, we can do it. Things are already better now than when I was diagnosed 6 years ago. So let's just have a bit of belief. Thanks for listening.